Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers. This is the Asics Novablast 5 and this is the Asics Superblast 2. Two shoes, as you'll know from our multi-tester reviews, we are big fans of. Now, these are also two shoes that sit at very different price points. Superblast 2 is the more expensive. The Novablast 5 is a lot cheaper and is a lot easier to get hold of than this shoe. Now, what we're going to do in this video is take you through the key differences and give you a sense of whether there is any kind of overlap in terms of the experience, in terms of the types of runs that these shoes can work for, and whether the Novablast 5 could give you a Superblast-like experience for a little bit less money. So first we'll get into those key differences, then give you our multi-tester take on whether you should go for the Novablast 5 or the Superblast 2. So let's get into those nitty-gritty details and differences between the Novablast 5 and Superblast 2. Let's start with price, and the Novablast 5 is considerably cheaper than the Superblast 2, while both are offered in standard width size options only. Weight-wise, the Novablast 5 weighed in heavier for us than the Superblast 2 in a UK men's size 8. You're getting shoes both with 8mm drops, with the Superblast 2 offering a bigger stack of cushioning at both the heel and the forefoot compared to the latest Novablast. At the upper, it's engineered woven mesh versus jacquard mesh with similar tongue and lacing combinations used, and the Novablast 5 heel collar offering a touch more padding. There's big differences at the midsole, where the Novablast uses the new FF Blast Max for a softer feel compared to the Eco Plus included in the Novablast 4, and also the Superblast 2, where it's combined with the FF Blast Turbo Plus found in Asics' Metaspeed Carbon Racers. Asics adopts a similar trampoline-inspired outsole design on both shoes to spread those foams across a relatively broad base to bring that bounce throughout the shoe. You're also getting similar outsole designs, with the Novablast offering a bit more coverage at the forefoot and lateral areas of the shoe.
Comes the fit of the Superblast 2 and the Novablast 5. I've got the same size in both shoes, which is a UK 9, a US 10 with Asics. It's the same size I use across the Asics range, and both of them had a really good fit for me. I'd say you have got a really roomy forefoot on the Novablast 5, but even as someone with a narrow foot, like I am, have too much room there as someone with a narrow foot, but it's not been a problem in any way with lockdown or anything like that. Got the right amount of length at the front there in terms of room for my toes, good hold around the heel and midfoot. I find them both very comfortable shoes just to slip on day after day. So yeah, no concerns with the fit. I'd stick to your normal size.
Okay, so the fit for me in the Novablast 5 and the Superblast 2, quite a similar fit actually. Both very comfortable. I'm a size 8 in the UK. I very much like wearing both of these shoes. They're both Asics shoes, so a similar fit. What I would say is that the Novablast 5 is a little bit more forgiving. It feels a little bit wider, and the upper just feels a little bit more flexible in terms of how it puts pressure on your feet. So if you maybe have a slightly wider foot, you're probably going to be better off with the Novablast 5 over the Superblast 2, but there's not a lot in it, and I find both of these shoes very, very comfortable, so I would stick to my size in both of them.
So in terms of fit, it's been very good for me in both of the shoes. I've got them both in the UK size 8. That is my typical running shoe size, and that's generally the shoe size that works best for me in Asics shoes. Now, what I would say is the key differences for me is that with the Novablast 5, it definitely has a more of a relaxed fit, and I would say it's a bit more roomy in the toe box of the shoe. I think it opens up a little bit more going further back in the shoe as well. And if you prefer something that's a bit more accommodating, particularly if you've got slightly wider feet, then I think that would be a better fit for most people. I've got quite skinny, narrow feet, and while it is a lot roomier, I found it's not been overly roomy or generous with that space. I think with the Superblast 2, it definitely does narrow a little bit more. It's not super narrow in any way, but I do think like the space up front in the toe box is still very good. That hold at the midfoot is very good as well too. Another area I think is a key difference for me is that there's just a bit more padding around the heel collar in the Novablast 5, where it's definitely a shoe for me that's geared towards kind of giving you a little bit more on that comfort side, where you're getting that padding, a pretty good amount of padding on the heel collar on the Superblast 2, but it definitely isn't as much as it is on the Novablast 5. So the things for me would be that the Novablast 5 is a lot more roomy, particularly the front of the shoe and the middle section of the shoe. The Superblast 2 has less kind of padding at the heel collar, but generally for me, I think going true to size for both of these shoes should be fine for most people.
Let's give you a quick word on fit then, in amongst the pistachio shells on this bench. And in the Asics Superblast 2 and the Novablast 5, I ran in my regular running shoe size, which is a UK 8.5. I think these are both really kind of roomy, accommodating shoes. There's loads of space in the toe box up front. Big thumbs width there, nice clearance across the top of the toes. Superblast 2, for me, they hold really well in the midfoot. The heels are nicely padded. I have no slipping at all. Everything feels locked down and comfortable and nice, and I would recommend going true to size in these shoes, particularly if you want to go long haul, because they're plenty roomy. in the Novablast 5. These are even airier. I mean, there's so much flex in the toe box here. These are sort of spacious. Some people have complained about the fact that they feel too spacious, particularly if you've got narrow feet. Maybe they will feel a bit wide, but I ran in my regular running shoe size and I found everything good. I really look for lots of toe box room. So look, you can see you've got lots of clearance on the end. There's plenty of flex for the toes across the top. Lockdown across the midfoot was nice and secure. I had good hold in the heels as well. Tongues take the edge off. No problems with this, and I recommend going true to size in this shoe, unless you really want a snug fit, or you've got a narrow foot where you might want to think about going half a size down.
So the Asics Superblast 2 and the Asics Novablast 5 are both shoes that I've really liked testing this year. I think they both fit their roles very well within the Asics lineup, with the Novablast 5 being more of the mid-range shoe, the kind of daily trainer that's designed to be pretty good value, appeal to a wide range of runners, have a fairly inoffensive ride that's actually, very pleasant ride in fact, and one that I think will work for lots of different runners. You've also got a load of cushioning there underfoot, but it's still a fairly lightweight shoe. Got a slight rocker there that does help you roll through your foot strike smoothly, and actually that's been improved a little bit on the Novablast 5 compared to the Novablast 4 for me, thanks to the redesigned heel bevel, which is a little bit less huge than the one on the Novablast 4, which does make it a slightly smoother ride. But you've got a good foam in the midsole there, which is comfortable, but it's not necessarily as responsive, as exciting as the stuff you are going to get on the Superblast 2. For me, the Novablast 5 definitely works best for kind of easy runs, relaxed daily training, long runs, that kind of thing. You can pick up the pace in the shoe, but you're not getting a huge amount of responsiveness out of this foam. It's more just the fact that it's a pretty lightweight shoe and one with a nice rocker. That means you can turn your feet over quite well. The foam is soft but not too mushy for me, so I find I can run faster in the shoe without it feeling like I'm wading through a big wedge of soft foam. So it's reasonably versatile, but certainly not as versatile as something like the Superblast, which is kind of a special shoe. So it's obviously a lot more expensive than the Novablast 5. It's billed as a super trainer without a plate. You've got this huge stack of Asics' best foam there, the FF Turbo Plus, and that foam just is a lot livelier, a lot more responsive, and it really makes it a lot easier to pick up the pace in the Superblast compared to the Novablast. It's also a lighter shoe than the Novablast, and really you can kind of do everything that you would do in the Novablast. You can do it in the Superblast, and then it's got a lot more range in terms of that top end speed. Like, it's not necessarily a shoe that I absolutely adore running fast in myself, because style of runner I am, I've got a high cadence, fairly short stride, like quite a shuffly runner, and it's a big shoe. So it's not a heavy shoe, but it is a big shoe, and sometimes turning it over, it can feel a little bit too boat-like and big for me. I actually would be quite keen for them to shave off a bit of that heel bevel on the Superblast 3, as they have done with the Novablast 5. I think that would probably improve it a little bit for me, but I certainly can pick up the pace in it. I do enjoy running in it a lot. Recently I took it away for a trip. It was the only shoe I had for everything, and it's a comfortable shoe to walk around in. It then can do all the runs I did on that trip at a range of paces, and it just works for all of them really very well. And you do get a much livelier feel from the foam in this midsole compared to the one in the Novablast 5. So when I was running in both of them at the same time, that's the thing that really comes across. Like, the Superblast feels lighter, and it feels a lot poppier and more responsive under the forefoot in particular. You get a lot more lift off the toes. In general, it just feels like a more exciting ride. You've got a denser foam on the Novablast. It feels like a much more solid shoe, a heavier shoe, which it is, and one that's a bit more suited just for cruising along. It is still a pretty lightweight shoe, like I say, and it turns over well, but compared to the Superblast, you can get a lot more kind of pace and liveliness out of the shoe, and it's also stiffer, which I think does make it more comfortable at pace. That stiffness might detract from the ride a little bit at easier paces for some people. Like, I don't really mind it myself. It's not a shoe that's designed for pure comfort, but it does feel fine for me on easy runs. But then the extra flexibility you get from the Novablast might appeal to some people when they're looking at just cruising around their daily training. Like, there's a fairly big wedge of foam you get on the Superblast, and it does help with pushing you along, but it is quite stiff, like I say.
Okay, so you'll notice that I'm still not holding up the Superblast 2 because Mike still has it, so I need to go and get that off him at some point. Desperate to get that shoe back so I can do some training for Dubai Marathon that's coming up in a few weeks. So these two shoes are shoes that if I reviewed the Novablast 4 and the Superblast 2 and compared them, they're quite similar in how they run. They both have the same level of firmness in the midsole. They both have similar level of responsiveness, and it feels like the Novablast 4 took a lot of learnings from the Superblast to provide a better all-round versatile experience for runners. And I very much like both of those shoes, especially for training at a longer distance where I want to retain a consistent effort, but I still want a bit of comfort and a lot of padding as well. The Novablast 5, it's quite different than the Superblast 2 now, because this new midsole foam, this FF Blast Max, is a bit softer than what was in the Novablast 4, and as a result it changes the ride of the shoe quite a bit for me in comparison to the Novablast 4. The result of that is that it's definitely a lot softer than the Superblast 2, but also you don't get that same turnover that you get in the Superblast 2. Superblast 2 is a shoe that isn't very soft, and it has quite a rigid midsole, so it rolls your foot forward and really helps you maintain a nice fluid pace. I use the Superblast 2 quite a lot for longer training sessions, where I'm trying to maintain maybe my marathon pace, and it just really helps you just smoothly just cover that pace. It's not really noticeable like a carbon plate shoe or something, where you can feel the carbon plate doing something to impact the way that you're running. It's just a really smooth motion, very comfortable, nice level of padding for running at pace, and doesn't in any way sap your energy or slow you down or anything like that, but still retains a good level of comfort as well. The Novablast 5 is a shoe that, because of this softer midsole foam, it doesn't work so well as the Novablast 4 or the Superblast 2 when you are running faster, because for me it feels like I'm hitting that a little bit too hard, and I'm not getting a lot back. There's a little bit of energy return you get back from this foam when you're running at a slower pace or more of a consistent pace, but when you're picking up the speed, I feel like I'm really putting too much pressure into that midsole foam, and it's not giving it me back. It's sapping the energy a little bit when I'm running faster. I think that's really the key to what the Novablast 5 is now. I think it's more a daily shoe that fits more into that easier realm, longer runs maybe where you just want comfort and you're not trying to pick up the pace or maintain the tempo pace or anything like that. And the Superblast 2 is all out designed for those consistent long run paces. It's a fantastic marathon training shoe, probably be a great marathon shoe. I haven't used it for a marathon race, but the way that the shoe rides is just very fluid, very comfortable, but really allows you to maintain a pace, which for me, for marathon training, would be about 4-minute 30 kilometers if I'm going out to do like a 25k 30k long run, and that shoe just smooths your feet and just makes you just be able to do that run really comfortably without really adding anything to it. It's a very natural ride as well. It's not really forcing your foot into a specific position. Novablast 5, I wouldn't use it for those sorts of runs. I think I'd really feel it after a while, it just deadening the impact and not really giving me a lot back. But it is a very enjoyable shoe to wear for those easier runs or a longer run where you're just trying to just maintain a nice, comfortable effort. You get a little bit of bounce back. It's definitely a very comfortable shoe to wear, but for me, it definitely sits into that realm of easier day shoes now, as opposed to a versatile option. Superblast 2 is a very versatile shoe, great for easy runs. I know Kieran thinks it's a fantastic easy run shoe. I don't use it for easy runs. I prefer a lot more softness when I'm running easy runs. So if I'm just doing easy runs, I'd probably pick the Novablast 5. But for a shoe that is really well designed for faster training sessions at longer distance, you can also do a lot more with it.
So in terms of my running time in these two shoes, I've done over 50k in the Novablast 5 now. I have done near to 100 miles in the Superblast 2. And what I would say is these are two shoes that are very good at being ones that you just throw on, and they are very easy to forget about what's going on in and around your foot. To be ones that, you really can kind of tick that mileage off, really get that running time in your feet without really thinking too much about it. There definitely are some differences between these two shoes that I think does kind of influence how I would use them, how I think a lot of people may end up using them and want to use them. I think the first factor or area for me is the weight. Now, these aren't heavy shoes, either of them are heavy shoes, but when you consider, at least for me, that the Superblast 2 is a bigger stack shoe, comes in, weighs in lighter for me than Novablast 5. It just, feels like it runs a little bit nicer with that weight, just handles that weight a little bit better. Now, it isn't sloppy and it isn't heavy or cumbersome in the Novablast 5, and it's not a lower stacked shoe by a huge amount, but I just found that, having that kind of lighter weight on a max stack shoe is a very nice kind of experience overall. And it really kind of feeds into what you're getting in the midsole, what you're getting below, in the outsole as well, and what that kind of does for the ride in these shoes. I think for me, the Novablast 5, you've got the FF Blast Max. For me, it's spread across a kind of larger surface area. And what that does first and foremost is just create something that is a lot, or kind of naturally very stable. I think it's also a lot softer feeling than the kind of dual density midsole makeup in the Superblast 2. I think that what does for me the Novablast 5, it just, you know, comfort is the first thing it ticks off. It rolls through very nicely, very smoothly. And for me, when I've run in it, I found it felt more comfortable to do that at kind of easier and moderate paces. When I've tried to run a little bit quicker in it, it's not, you know, been totally uncomfortable to do that, but I've just felt that when I've tried to do that in the Superblast 2, it's felt more at home, it's felt more depth, and that's really down to that midsole, that dual density midsole being, you know, there's some softness there, but there's definitely some firmness as well too. There's some bounce as well. I think it's a more prominent bounce for me in the Superblast 2. I think the rocker is more prominent as well. You know, the rocker is pretty good in the Novablast 5, but I think coupled with all the things that you're getting in the Superblast 2, it just rolls through a little bit more aggressively for me. And I've raced in it, I've done track sessions in it, I've done faster sessions, I've done shorter and long kind of runs in it as well. And I felt it's covered, you know, or felt comfortable to do it at all of those paces. I think the other thing, and I've mentioned this in other videos, I think transitioning from those different paces, you know, the Superblast 2 does a very good job of that, and that's why it is kind of a standout do-it-all shoe. I think the Novablast 5, for me, when I have tried to mix the paces in a single run, I haven't found it as comfortable, I haven't found it as lively and bouncy, barring the first run that I did in it. But it's a definitely good experience in both of these shoes, just for very different runs. So I think these are good daily trainer shoes, you know, relatively kind of big stack shoes as well. For me, there's clearly one that is a little bit more versatile and a little bit more friendly towards running a little bit more at tempo and faster, but definitely good shoes for me. Other areas, I think the outsoles, I think, you know, for me, I think the Novablast 5 is giving you a little bit more rubber on that outsole, and I think durability wise, I'm seeing less wear, obviously less running time, but for me, the Superblast 2 has been holding up pretty well. You're obviously still getting some exposed areas. There's definitely a bit more rubber on the Novablast 5 for me in those kind of similar areas as well. So for me, from a, you know, durability point of view, I think you're going to get a bit more from the Novablast 5. Gripping has been fine for me. I've run in kind of wetter and dry conditions for both. These aren't the best kind of, you know, road running outsoles available, but they seem to be up to the task. I've been up to the task in my run. So yeah, two very good shoes, two very good Asics shoes, two very good daily trainer shoes, but it's definitely one that I'd pick over the other. That's not to say the other one is bad, but I just think the other, or there's one shoe here that works a little bit better for me, and I'll get into that in my verdict.
So in testing, I've run north of 30 miles in the new Novablast 5. I've run much more in the Superblast 2, including a full marathon test in this shoe. That's on the channel now if you want to go and find it. All of that has been across a range of paces and terrain. I also did a side-by-side mile with one shoe on each foot to really tease out the differences between these two shoes. And here's how that went. So I've just done my side-by-side mile with the Superblast 2 on my right foot. I've got the Novablast 5 on my left foot. The minute you put the shoes on, you feel the higher stack in the Superblast. You can feel that there's that extra stiffness and firmness in the midsole compared to the softer Novablast 5, which feel sort of sinky when you first put them on by comparison. Superblast 2 sort of, you know, they're cushioned, but they sort of hold you up, and you're expecting that kind of stiffness and that roll through and that transition to come as a result of a slightly kind of stiffer ride. There's more immediacy as a result of that. They're both big cushion shoes though. I don't think the Superblast 2, you know, sacrificing that much cushion for me anyway. It does feel like a bigger shoe on the foot. There's a lot more kind of heft to it. It doesn't feel quite as nimble. You know, it's a thing to say that Novablast feels a bit more compact by comparison, because the Novablast is not a compact shoe by any stretch of the imagination, but it does feel, I mean, they're about the same weight, but I would say the Novablast 5 actually feels a bit lighter. I think it's just because you've got more of the Superblast underfoot. Stability wise, I quite like the firmness of the Superblast 2. I think that provides a bit more of a stable platform for me, a bit more reliability. You do feel a little bit of mush and wobble, I think, into the Novablast 5. If anything, I expect the Novablast 5 in my head for the runs that I'd done with it initially to be a bit more like the Superblast 2, but actually I think the Novablast 4, which had that kind of slightly additional stiffness, firmness underfoot, now feels much more like the Superblast than the Novablast 5 does. The Novablast 5 brings softness. So how does that translate then? Well, if you've run in the Superblast 2, or if you've watched reviews and you've thought actually maybe they might be a little bit too stiff for you to go long haul into the long miles and you wanted more softness, then the Novablast 5 is going to add that. It gets to the energy in a different way though. It's slightly more reliant on a sink and a bounce for that energy to come back, where you get a lot of energy and bounce from the Superblast 2, but you also get a little bit of that kind of immediacy from the stiffness that comes. So it's a bit quicker to respond. It's a bit punchier as a result. There's a bit more kind of top speed potential, I think, of the Superblast 2. It's overall just a bit more of an energetic shoe, where the Novablast 5 now, I think, a bit more cushioning, probably a bit more accommodating for going slower and longer, whereas the Superblast 2 is probably better, you know, cruising those kind of tempo paces, maybe a little bit higher up if you don't mind running in a big shoe. Now, that is how I would divide those shoes, but we'll do the verdict back in the office.
Comes to my verdict, like, these are both good shoes and shoes that fit their roles well within the Asics lineup. If you are looking for one shoe to do absolutely everything and you want, you're prepared to pay for a special feeling on the fit, you are going to get it with the Superblast 2. Like, it's a pretty amazing shoe. It's not one that's entirely to my taste. Like, I've picked out shoes that I prefer to it that are also, really fun all-rounders and all that, but it's certainly an amazing shoe, one that I do like running in, and one that obviously is very popular with people at large. Like, if you are just looking for one shoe to do everything, the Superblast is the one to do it in. If you're looking for a fast training shoe, then the Superblast is the one to pick over the Novablast. But the Novablast is certainly better value. You can use it for the same kind of runs as the Superblast. You're just not going to get the same energetic ride feel, and it is a bit more kind of cushy and relaxed when it comes to easy runs. Like, if you're looking at putting these shoes in a rotation, the Superblast either could be, a rotation killer, a shoe you use for everything, or one that fits into rotation in the middle of it there, like picking up the bulk of your mileage with a maybe a very easy, comfortable cushion shoe for some easy runs, and then a fast plated shoe for really top end speedy stuff. Whereas the Novablast 5, I position more towards the cushioned end of things in a rotation. I'd want to have a faster training shoe alongside this, and maybe a racer as well. So you can use it for a bit of everything. Like, it doesn't really have the pace that I'd be looking for in an all-rounder. If you are a newer runner though, I think the Novablast 5 is a really good all-rounder actually. I think it's one that will protect the legs well, but is fairly lightweight. You can use it for some speedy stuff. Like, if I was a new runner and I wanted one shoe to do everything, I would get the Novablast first before spending loads of money on something like the Superblast. I think the Novablast does play a role in being a cheaper version of the Superblast in a way, and it is a fair bit cheaper. But the Superblast, you are paying more for it, but you are going to get a big upgrade in performance if you do spend that money.
Okay, so my verdict on the Superblast 2 and the Novablast 5 is, obviously the Superblast 2 is a much more expensive shoe. So if it came down to cost and the fact that it's almost impossible to buy the Superblast 2, and I know many of you will comment on this video saying that you can't get hold of it. Sorry about that. There's nothing we can do to get them to stock more Superblast 2s. But because of that, Novablast 5 is probably going to be the only option for most people anyway. Even if you could get it, it's a very expensive shoe. £200 is a lot of money to spend on a training shoe, which is above a lot of people's budget. So the Novablast 5 comes in under that. It's a shoe designed for more general runners. It's a shoe designed for people that don't want to spend £200 on a running shoe. But it's not as good a shoe. It obviously is significantly cheaper than the Superblast 2. If I was looking at purely the shoes themselves and ignoring the price and the availability of them, I would say that the Superblast 2 is a far superior shoe for most runs. If you're going to go out and buy a shoe, then you wanted something that you could do a lot of stuff in, easier runs, daily sessions, faster sessions, long runs. Superblast 2 just ticks off all of those really, really well. Novablast 5 doesn't really tick off all of those well at all. It really ticks off the easier runs and the comfortable training sessions, the daily runs where you just want a nice bit of softness and comfort, and you want to tick off the miles in as much with as much padding and comfort as you can get. But it's really not a shoe designed for versatility, or it's definitely not a shoe I'd use if I was training for a marathon and I was doing lots of longer sessions or faster sessions. So I think it really comes down to that if you're looking between these two shoes and you're not worried about price or availability. But obviously, if you're just a general runner that's looking for a comfortable daily shoe, you're not going to go for the Superblast 2 because it's just so expensive and hard to get. So for me, I'm going to go Superblast 2 all the way, but I understand that the Novablast 5 is the more cost-effective option, but it's limited to easier sessions. You can't really do a lot in this shoe.
After my first run in the Novablast 5, where I ran well and the Novablast 5 gave back good energy, I was wondering if they might be a more affordable alternative to the Superblast 2. A sort of Superblast light, if you will. But after logging many more miles in both shoes, I don't think that's quite the case here. Both shoes are enticingly versatile, but the Superblast 2 is by far the more energetic shoe with a smoother ride, and I think a more consistent punch across all the ranges of pace. The Novablast 5 has energy and it's also a capable cruiser, but for me the softer edge just isn't quite as encouraging as the ride that you get from the Superblast 2. It just doesn't quite give you that extra oomph. I actually think the Novablast 4 runs more like the Superblast 2. It's a bit firmer, a bit snappier. Now the sweet spot for the Novablast 5 and the Superblast 2 is really cruising from around my marathon pace up to tempo. There's enough cushion on both shoes to eat easy miles in relative comfort too. I could long haul in both of these shoes, but I find both shoes can get a bit sluggish at my very slowest pace, or at least when I'm running in my heaviest form. When it comes to the fastest training, both shoes can be a bit too much shoe on the foot, I find, for me to want to tackle things like all-out kind of intervals. Again, you can do these sessions in either shoe, but I wouldn't say either of them really excels at it over and above some other shoes. Now, the Superblast 2 is a better shoe all round. The grip's superior, the ride is snappier, but if you're on a budget, could you cover the same runs in the Novablast 5? The answer, I think, is probably yes. Would they be as good? I don't think quite. If you're taking money out of the question, I'd certainly choose the Superblast 2 out of these two shoes. I think on balance it's the more accomplished all-rounder and the slightly snappier ride, which appeals more to the way I run.
So my takeaway is you should go for the Asics Novablast 5 or the Asics Superblast 2. Now the first thing I'll say is that these are two very good daily trainer shoes. If you're telling me which one is the best, it's a no-brainer. It's a Superblast 2. This is the shoe if you want a shoe that can cover all of your runs and do it in a really good way, then that's what the Superblast 2 is going to give you. In terms of the Novablast 5 being a Superblast Lite, I think it works for some of the runs that the Superblast 2 works well at, but not all of them. I think this is a shoe you get if you can't get hold of the Superblast 2. You want a shoe that's accommodating, that is comfortable, works for shorter and longer runs, and I think for me, easy to moderate paces, that's really where it fits best for me. So if that's what would work for you, that's what you would look for in a daily trainer shoe, and go for the Novablast 5. If you want the best shoe between these two shoes, the one that can work for faster paces, longer runs, shorter runs, could be used for track sessions as well, it's a Superblast 2 you want. I appreciate it's hard to get hold of, but if you can, you're going to be rewarded with a very good daily trainer shoe that weighs in at the kind of standard daily trainer weight, and overall it's just a very good shoe, one of my favourite shoes to run in or to have run in this year. So for me, if I could get hold of it, and I'm fortunate that I do have one, I would be going for the Superblast 2. If you wanted a shoe that, and that daily trainer profile that definitely veers towards being more comfortable, but can definitely work for shorter and longer runs at easy to moderate paces, I'd be going for the Novablast 5. Okay, so there you have it. That is our take on how the Novablast 5 compares to the Superblast 2. If you've got any questions about either of these shoes or other shoes you want to see them compared to, do let us know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.